Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Living Room Artist Chat live streams that we do every Tuesday with different makers and artists in our community, and not just our local community, but our community across the world, I suppose. Now that we're online, our community is expanding, which is amazing. But today we are chatting with someone a little more local, an emerging artist, a mixed media artist based in Oshawa, Ontario, currently. Their name is Deanna Hood, and we are so excited to have connected with them. They have, attended the studio before when we actually had our studio space. They are familiar with some of our regulars, our volunteers, our fantastic creative community that have, helped support the studio all along the way in this journey. So we're so excited to get to know them a little bit more today, learn about who they are, what they do, what inspires them, motivates them, holds them back, gets in the way of them being their fantastic artist self, and how they overcome that using creativity or, I don't know, whatever artists do to get by. So without further ado, let me invite our guest for today into the live stream. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Here we go. Oh, technical stuff. Ever learn. And as always, folks, as you're watching, let us know how it goes. Oh, hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm hanging in. I don't know. Well, you're in Oshawa as well, I assume. But for folks who are watching who aren't in Oshawa, it's kind of like a gray, kind of drab, drizzly day, which is
A little.
I don't know. Do you like gray, drizzly days? Is that part of your thing, or?
I think it's like this. There's this weird sense of like nostalgia in rainy days. It reminds me of like being little and like walking around in like puddles and stuff. Now if I wear if I love watching the rain, but being in the rain's a little more miserable than
True.
I would have liked to be in.
I think, yeah, that kind of nostalgia. I always have to check myself. Sometimes my nostalgia comes along with a lot of privilege that lets me appreciate that stuff. But
Yeah.
anyways, thank you so much for joining us today. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, there might be people watching or watching now during the live stream or once it's archived later on who might not be familiar with you. Do you want to introduce yourself for the community to shine a little light on you?
Sure. Hi, my name's Deanna. I'm from Oshawa. I'm currently just finishing up my first year at OCAD. I live in Whitby, but I'm from Oshawa and I work in Oshawa and I'm constantly in Oshawa, so I'm still very associated with the city. I like to do abstract art. I love using like acrylic paint or oil pastels or like any sort of found materials. And that's about it.
That's a whole lot of everything. That's a whole lot of amazing. Thank you. And yeah, you were mentioning in your mixed media art, one of the things I love about what you do is that repurposing thing. It's mixed media, but with an awareness of repurposing and upcycling materials, which is really, really cool. Oh, and we have some Traction fans in.
Yeah.
So yeah, what has it been like during these strange and uncertain times? We've been a year in this interesting place due to the pandemic. Have you found that that's actually helped in your creative making with sourcing materials, or has it become a bit of a barrier for someone who repurposes things?
Well, I feel like I've been, and maybe other people who get art supplies from around here, I've noticed there's this odd shortage of materials, whether it be like at Curry's or at other places. So it's harder to find um, materials in general. So I feel like we're kind of pushed uh to have to find materials, like repurpose them. So I find like I go through all my old drawers and I'll find like sheets of paper or I have a bunch of books that I've been gifted over the years that I use for like collage. So I do a lot of collaging. So I feel like, as long as you're willing to like dig into your belongings, it's not too bad, just because again, I feel like there's a lot of supplies that are being shorted right now
Yeah.
because of the pandemic.
I think this time has really challenged people to, what do you do when you can't get your hands on something new or the best quality or the fine arts quality that some of us have come to expect in our work. this time has really challenged us to think outside the box and like look around us, like directly around us for things that we can incorporate into our art. Have you learned anything about yourself during this time and how you create?
Um, I feel like I've gone through this huge like style change in the last year or so, and I think it's just come from um, I feel like I've let go of pressure that I put on myself to kind of come up with a very particular final product, and I focused so much more on like the process. And through doing that in the last year and having the time to focus on the process and not so much in the end product, I feel like I've just become so much more um almost more gestural than
Huh.
like very solid. And it's been fun, and it's been more relaxing or more exciting to focus on that aspect rather than again like the final product.
Yeah. Oh, so
Exactly.
from Create My Art Story. Hey, product is huge. Absolutely. And I think,
Definitely.
well, you were mentioning earlier that you're an OCAD right now. Yeah. So this is your first year?
Yeah.
Holy moly, what's that been like?
It's I mean, they're the professors in the school especially, I feel like they're very progressive. They understand that this is very complicated, so the expectations of material use are like out the window. They're like find anything you can and use what you have, and that's amazing. 'Cause they don't want to encourage you to feel like you have to use
Hmm.
or have to put yourself out there to gather those things. So, a lot of the assignments themselves were, repurposing materials, which is amazing because that's what I love to do anyways. And they shifted all of their events to online. So I was on this very like brief, I forget what it's called. They had like a display of different artists actually repurposing found materials. And so yeah, it's just it's been a nice transition to online just because I feel like it's something that like the industry is going towards. I suppose like, you're a lot of artists are, they want to have a website and they want to have like an online shop and stuff like that. So I feel like OCAD's very good at making that transition.
That's good to hear. I know that not all schools have been able to do that as gracefully. Not
Yeah, absolutely.
that makes me wonder if that has something to do with having teachers in place that are artists themselves who understand what it's like to work within limitations and perhaps teachers on the growing edge. Like we're really lucky we have some fantastic arts educators in Durham region, like Danny Crosby is like an artist and a teacher that comes to mind, for example. But I think for a lot of people who've one of the reasons why I was interested in talking to you today because was that a lot of artists of my generation, for example, who graduated from programs, we came out of a place where there was, I don't know, there was a really interesting tension between that concept of product versus process. On one hand, them saying process, process, process is everything, and then the other side of it was you have to be this way and do things in this way, and so you graduate and you are exactly like every other, product our school is producing. And I was curious if that was still something you felt was a part of that system today, or if it's going back into the artist's hands in some way.
I I maybe I've had really good professors in my first year. I'm very fortunate to have these people be like, the process is super important.
Mm.
If you sit with a piece of paper in front of you, um, you know, don't focus on it so much. Put it on the wall, take a step back. Um, just, they focus so much on the process, and the final product has just been, I feel like compared to like all the other people in this course, it's all so different. So
Mm.
and again, maybe it's just from OCAD, but I feel like there's definitely like the process is prioritized for sure,
That's
which is really refreshing.
yeah, that's so good to hear because I think the pressures on every artist of all ages, all abilities, all walks of life are I don't know. And, folks in the chat, keep me accountable on this, on my wild assumptions. But there is this pressure more than ever before to be a brand, to, have it all figured out right from the very beginning so that you can have, you can set yourself up for whatever version of success you think is out there. Uh, and it's really difficult. Like, do you ever find that you struggle with that process of, how do I move myself forward and promote myself as an artist, and how do I hold on to my creative voice and that part of me that needs to step back from that?
I definitely think that's something I'm still trying to figure out. Trying to insert my personal like morals within my work while maintaining, I guess something that's really important for me is like consistency. Something that's always been like drilled inside my head is like develop a consistent artistic voice, not necessarily style, but like voice
Mm-hmm.
where the subject matter as well as the actual piece itself is it's representative of me, and there's every piece that I create is like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
Something that I'm still trying to figure out, definitely, especially as like a, I guess, quote unquote, like emerging artist. Like, I find that I'm struggling to do that still. But again, like I feel like there's not a huge pressure on myself as there used to be. I feel like in like high school or when I first got into high school, which was like forever ago, I was super stressed out about that and figuring out what I want to do, exactly what I want my art style to be.
Yeah.
Um, and then eventually, I feel like it's really important to kind of let go of that very strict expectation and to kind of figure or just relax a bit, stand back and kind of figure out the process itself.
And I think there's some skip art school appropriate. That what an interesting. Yeah, facts are to have the perfect I'm a process brand. Like, this pressure is really interesting. And like, have you always, you mentioned in high school it was something that you struggled with, and I think a lot of young artists and makers do in high school, especially now. There seems to be this push, like, you have to know where you want to go to school and have it all figured out, and all. I can't even imagine. Um, was it like an easy process from that point to the point you're at right now?
I think, I mean,
I guess, how did you navigate that? And just in case there are folks watching or listening who might find themselves in that exact place right now.
I mean, I think not rushing into any large decisions is a really good way to kind of relieve any sort of pressure. I took a couple years off and then I attempted to go to school and then I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing that? I'm not ready to do that yet. And thankfully I realized that very early. So if I hadn't, I would still be, with that institution, which would be probably really good, but I feel like my work wouldn't really be representative of my values. And I feel like there would be a lot more um, direct outside influence rather than like personal experience. So I think that, I'm not saying like don't go to school, why would you do that? Don't waste your money. Like, if you want to do that, absolutely do that. I think that'd be wonderful and it's a great experience so far. And, but being just focusing on like taking a step back and being patient with yourself, I think is, a good thing.
Always a good thing. Easier said than done sometimes, I think, but such a good thing. Learning how to be
Mhm.
ourselves. Um, Now, can I take a step backwards in time? I'm curious about when you first knew that you were an artist. I,
Oh boy.
yeah, I ask this to a lot of folks because it's something I think we take for granted that artists just do, and we do. But was there a moment for you or a point in your life where you're like, yeah, this is the thing that makes me happy. This is the thing that drives me.
I think it's always been there. I was very young. I was like, a very, very young child and I always was drawing. That was just kind of something that I always did. My notes were full of doodles and I had my little sketchbook and um I've always kind of just done that. I mean, I always knew that I wanted to be involved in art in some way, shape, or form. And there was a brief time where I lost that just because of I thought, what am I supposed to do with this? Is it really productive in society to be an artist, and it is absolutely do that. That's a great idea. So I thought I wanted to be like a teacher for a long time. And then I dropped that too. I was like, you know what, I don't want to lose sight of like my main focus. I'd love to be involved in art in any way, shape, or form. And I've always kind of, held on to that, whether it be in the back of my mind or my main, drive.
What was it about you mentioned wanting at one point to be a teacher. What was it that made you realize that wasn't for you?
Um, I think to kind of answer the question, I originally wanted to be a teacher because I loved the community involvement.
Hmm.
I loved being surrounded by people, and sharing my experience in a way that like educates others. But I feel like the um like it's very concrete lesson plans and the final product, like we were talking about before, is very, very important when you're teaching. I've taught a couple tiny little things here and there. Um, and again, like the final products and the lesson plan is very concrete, it's very strict, it's very exact. It has to hold up to a certain expectation. And I feel like that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a bit more freedom. Um, but it's I feel there's, especially with the modernization of education, because it's always changing and growing. Maybe that'll change in the future, and maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe I'll want to go and be like an art teacher or something. But um, for now, I think that's not something I want to do, just because of I think I got into it for I think I set myself up for failure because I didn't know what the like requirements were at the time to be an educator.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, I mean, in the arts, it's not an unfamiliar thing. We are raised, like some of us are raised with, that those messages around us that tell us from a very early age that art isn't like you need something to fall back on. Like you can't be an artist. You can do art for fun. You can do it on the side, but in your spare time, when do any of us have spare time in life, right? That's my thing involves intention. Yeah. We make time for things we love. But anyways, that's another conversation. But, for a lot of us, there was this message of you can't or you won't succeed. It's too hard. So be something, it's not a real job, So I think a lot of us found ourselves like thinking about teaching as a possibility because of that. Do you think that was part of it? Like, was there this sense of this other dream is just too big or it's too unmanageable?
I um I think I don't think it's the too big, but I think it was just like there was this thought that was like unrealistic. You can't
Mm.
you can't do it because it's not realistic. It's not beneficial to society's expectation. It's not like productive. You can't really, you're not going to make any money, and that in itself is like, it's not what it's really nice if you are able to be financially dependent on your art career, but I feel like, why is that the main goal? I thought it was more about like again, like community involvement, making connections, meeting new people and just like enjoying what you're creating. And again, it would be amazing to um be financially dependent on art, but there was a long time where I was like, that's not a realistic thing. Especially after I dropped out the first time, I was like, oh my God, I failed at art, so now it's time to pursue business because I was like, that is a nice connection, and I feel like I can combine the two in a way. But I feel like if I went to school for something like business, I would hate it. I would hate it so much. Um, Not people who can succeed at that. I'm so impressed, but that's just not my brain. That's not really how it works
Yeah.
for me anyways. Everyone's paths are different, and I feel like it's better that I focus on my thing instead of trying to pursue something that I would just hate so much.
Yeah. The things we think we should do versus the things that we are called to do.
Exactly.
It's a really interesting thing. And I think there is an art to business as well. I think we undermine other, paths when we assume that I don't know what, because I've been there as well. I'm thinking there's several points in my life where I've thought, oh, you know what? I hate this. I'm going to leave it behind. I want something stable, secure, all of those things. And I always find myself being pulled back to, these core things that make me happy, that help me feel, that may not be easy to do, but make me feel satisfied, sort of help me feel content as I move through life. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think I would make a, I'm an accidental business person because I run the charity, but that's it, like totally accidental. I'm not good at it by any stretch.
You're living the dream right now, though, being able to like again, like the community involvement aspect while running this business charity
Yeah.
in the creative field. I think that's like just such a dream for a lot of people being able to do that, like to run a studio at all.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was like, I think there are so many different ways to do that. There's not one way. And there are years for me where like I think it's still very much hand to mouth, very much feast or famine. You know, for there were 2 years where before the studio closed where I was volunteering my time there and making do through odd jobs and fee for service work and all the other things that makers and creative people do to make ends meet. Um, so I think if anyone had tuned in at that point, they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, this is not good for you. And it wasn't good for me because I was, well, there's burning out sometimes, right? Just not taking care of myself in the way that I needed to. But
Hmm.
when it at its best, the studio, any studio, I think works, any community studio or art hive works because we have folks like you in the community, because it's not just about one person doing it, it's how people come together and interact and engage. And that's when things are really exciting and interesting as well. It's not just about one idea or one person's views, it's this really dynamic creative space. um, yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a rant there.
No, of course. I asked. I wanted to know. I think it's what you do is like amazing because you provide this creative space for people of all skill levels,
Mm.
and you take donations for materials, which is fantastic. Nothing really goes to waste, which is incredible. Um, and it's not like again, it's not concrete art lessons, but you'll host like little events. You do like the gesture drawing with the one teacher,
Yes.
and you do all sorts of tiny little things that like people of multiple art forms can go to and like exist in this creative space and feel like refreshing without there's not like there's pressure to you again going back to like the final product. There's no pressure for the final product, but it's just good enriching space to be in.
It's, well, yeah, I think being, having the space and the time and permission to grow and discover yourself wherever you might be in your journey is so important. Um, and when you like, it's interesting as you're talking about product, as we're having this conversation, I'm reminded about how of artists, we are the art at the end of the day, aren't we? Because without us, the product doesn't happen. The product is kind of a, I don't know, what, a symptom that makes it sound like being an artist. I don't mean that, but it happens because of us, because of our story, and we develop our skills so that we can communicate the story in the way we want to. But I think it's the individual that is the art, really, the art. And the, oh, I need to think about this. I'm getting, whoa.
That's so funny.
Rein me in. I think I'm going off the tracks a little bit. But it makes me think about that because our product is not the important thing at the end of the day. It's our voice, how we experience and see the world.
Hmm.
Um, and the only way you can ever be familiar with that is if you give yourself the space and the permission to do everything, including failing. Like, it's really interesting that when you came out of that first experience of school, one of the main responses was, oh, I failed. Why do you think that was?
Definitely a bit of like external and internal influence. There were people who were like, "Oh, you're not gonna go back to school again," and I was like, "What are you talking about? I love school. It's gonna be amazing." But also myself, I was like, "Man, this was this was such a huge change, and I feel like I didn't handle it as well." And so at first, I didn't think, I'm not ready per se, but I thought I was like, maybe this just isn't for me. But then how do I continue? Where do I go from here? I don't know. I'm not sure. So, I took a few more years off and I took, some time and then this little like I guess stigma in my head formed where it was like I have to go to very specific school. But I'm also gonna like when I applied to OCAD, I was like, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm probably not gonna, invest time into that. I'm also gonna apply for a lot of business and like environmental courses and stuff like that. So and then when I got accepted into OCAD, I was like, oh my God, okay, well maybe it's something that I'm meant to do after all.
So you kind of threw it all out there. You diversified all of your approaches to learning and education. And
Yeah.
this is one of the things that came back to you. Do you think if you'd received an acceptance to, for those programs in environmentalism, for example, and you'd approached those, do you think that you'd still be creating art?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would on this like of course it would be like um wouldn't be like I guess it would be more labeled as like a hobby. But even then, like if I pursued both at the same time, I'd really hate to just call my work like a hobby.
Yeah,
Like but again, calling my art work in general is a very recent development because I like, um I don't know, there was just this shift where I was like, okay, well, I should probably start calling them work because it's what I want to do. Not just calling them like little paintings I do on the side and kind of diminishing the value of my work again.
it's so, so, so strange, isn't it? It took me years after I graduated from theater school. I went to Ryerson, for example, and it took me years to say I'm an actor without feeling like I was like like apologizing or pretending or something. It was so.
Right.
But if I'd graduated from a business program, or if I had a very like if I was a plumber, I don't think I'd feel like I was lying when I said I was a plumber. It's like really really interesting.
Yeah. And it's the same like when you asked me recently, you're like, can I call you an emerging artist? And I was like, oh my God, I don't know. Is that really me? I had to take some like a second to like reflect on that term. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's what I am.
Hmm.
Um, it's especially in the beginning stages, which is like what emerging is, I guess. Um, finding a title or a plat or yeah, finding a title is very confusing, I should say.
Yeah, terminology and labels in general can be complicated, I suppose. Part of because I think we're always growing and changing, and and that's part of I think that's part of being a creative individual is being open to those periods of growth and adaptation, and it's kind of a resilience that's just built into all humans. But I think artists maybe tap into it a little more easily. But it does remind me, are you familiar? Like there's an Amanda Palmer quote that I love, and I won't get it right now, but the gist of it is that we can't wait for someone else to tell us we're an artist. You just kind of have to wake up one day or decide in the moment, yeah, that's what I am. I'm an artist. And then you just keep doing what you're doing.
Mhm.
If I can find that quote, it's really good. But yeah, it's interesting, right? We struggle with those names and labels, and but I love how you identified that if you don't kind of claim that for yourself, claim that thing that feels right, you're also diminishing who you are and what you do. That's pretty insightful. I think a lot of folks struggle with that.
Well, I think I've been asked enough times and I've asked myself enough times, like, I guess I'm an artist. And then it went from being like, I guess I'm an artist to being like, okay, you know what? I absolutely am. I do these things. I involve myself in these creative spaces because that's what I want to do, because that's what I'm working towards. So if I just think you can be like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with calling yourself like an art hobbyist. You can call yourself whatever you want, but if you want to like establish like maybe like a professional vision. I'm not sure how to explain this. Then you can call yourself an artist or an emerging artist. You can label it however you'd like, however close you are or connected you are to this like creativity, I suppose.
Yeah. And if we don't do it, who will?
Yeah.
I suppose that's the other question there. If we keep for someone else to tell us we've arrived or we finally become something, that might never come. Right?
hmm
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. Do you think that the struggles you've encountered so far, including that idea of that, like in sort of engaging with confronting that sense of failure, do you think it's helped you develop as an artist?
Um, I think so. I think especially since my work is very lighthearted.
Mm.
I feel like it's not like really, I mean, I guess some of it can be really colorful, really loud, but I feel like no matter what, like there's this lightheartedness in my work, and I feel like that kind of comes from like the lax approach that I have towards failing and towards succeeding. I don't put no, I don't put pressure on myself anymore when I hate something.
Mm.
I don't think there's um, such a thing as like overworking something. I mean, there is, but you can always kind of change it. Um, like there was a piece that I did for one of my painting classes, and it was just I really didn't like it, but I also I think it's important to like realize why you don't like something.
Mm.
And I think that kind of ties in with your relationship to like failure. And if I put a lot of pressure on me hating this thing, then, I feel like I need to um, kind of like dig deeper and realize like why I don't like something and then tie it to like failure and my relationship with that. And so instead of dwelling on the fact that I hated this painting, I was like, I'll just go over it. And I did, and it ended up being a really good, like, a piece that I was really happy with, and I'm okay with that process.
I
So
I love that. I wish more people were that because it's sometimes as we work through those difficult moments with ourselves that I feel we come out the other side into something really like we break through that difficult place into somewhere amazing and rewarding.
mhm.
But if we give up, if we kind of say, that's it, I'm done, then we'll never ever reach that place. That's amazing that you've come to that place. I'm going to be a little ageist now. I'm so glad that you've come to that place at the age you're at right now, rather than, so many of us, it happens so much later in life. That's, yeah, apologies for being ageist.
Oh God, I mean, even like regardless of age, I think it's okay to like shift or change your relationship with failure and change and being adaptive. Like I don't feel like, I feel fortunate for having a lax approach to what I do, but I feel like, if you're 60, 70, 80, whatever, and you decide to completely drastically change like your style or what you're doing with your life, I feel like that's okay as well. Like there's no pressure there's no like timeline to when you're allowed to make these like drastic life changes. And that goes for art, and I think that goes for anything else as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think certainly for folks who are watching, when the living room talks about art, we're talking about every possible expressive modality out there. There's so many opportunities to tell your story and express who you are. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's never too late to start, and it's never too late to change or adapt or, any of those, yeah, to explore something completely new, to take those creative risks and to see, how those risks might reward you.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think that's one of the wonderful things about owning your creativity. Now, we've talked about the idea of failure. Can we talk about successes and what success looks like to you?
Um, I think success for me looks like enjoying myself through the entirety of making a piece. Being really like the second I get really excited about making something, I'm like, oh my God, this can be great. And then I'm making it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And then I finish it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's great. I feel like if I can, if that entire process is, oh my God, it's great, then I think I'm successful. And most of the time, putting my stuff out there and it being like received and consumed by other people, I think people can see that when you've really enjoyed what you've done to a certain work.
Yeah,
I think that's what, like, throughout the entire thing, if I'm having a good time, then I think it's successful.
that's, I love that. Yeah, what a way to live. That's how I. Uh, and you recently had an exhibit, didn't you?
Yeah, so Cree, who is an amazing artist who recommended me for this chat actually. Thank you, Cree.
Thank you.
And I had um an exhibit, a display of work up at the Cork and Bean in Oshawa. I'm actually gonna go pick up my stuff today 'cause today's the last day,
Oh,
unfortunately. Sorry, guys. But it was up through all the month of April. And that was so exciting because it's been like 2 years since I've actually put my stuff out publicly, and it was really, I'm happy that I had that time between because I feel like this was like the most energetic and like most personal work that I've put out.
Hmm.
All of the pieces that I did, and I had a pretty wide variety, were ones that I was like really happy with. Um, Whereas when I first started doing shows, I was happy with all my work, but I feel like I was rushing to get things done, and I liked to have that time off. So I'm grateful for that. But I was really excited to get my work back out there. Um, and it to be well received. I'm really happy and thankful for everyone that like stopped in. I met so many people, which was like the most exciting thing um, about it is just being able to like meet and talk to people.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, like with the pandemic and the stay-at-home order, it happened like the day after we had put our like the we put our stuff up,
Oh,
which was so garbage, but like people still went and they still saw it because you can still see it when you walk in. And so that was good. So I think I'm thankful that I got to have that experience because it was so exciting. And I think like Cree is incredible. Like our style complements each other really well. It's very different, but it's very, very high energy. So I feel like I found like this business partner that I'd love to coordinate with more. So like that in itself was so exciting as well.
yeah. And for folks, if you're interested, you can follow Cree on Instagram at King Cree. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See how there'd be your work complements one another's something. Yeah. Differences in stylistic kind of choices
Mhm.
is kind of a conversation between the colors and just the form of it all. It seems, yeah, really interesting. I'm so sorry. I'm so sad that I missed the opening, my one chance to see it. Oh, you know what? I'm hoping that there will be more exhibits for you in the future. Do you have any
I,
kind of in the works right now?
Nothing. I think it was a one and done thing. I used to do um, a couple things like downtown Toronto with like FemFest. I did that a couple times forever ago when they were doing them. So nothing lined up right now, but I'm not gonna say no to whatever is pushed in my face.
Well, perhaps some living room collaborations. You never know.
That sounds so exciting. Let's talk about that more.
We will. We will. And just finding ways because I think we're in an interesting place right now where I don't think we're going to spring back to normal. I don't think there's going to be a flip the switch kind of moment with where we're at right now. So
Mhm.
I think it will be about building connections and finding innovative ways to connect with one another that are still safe and just safe, not just like pandemic safe, but also helping people feel secure safe as we kind of adjust, whatever that might mean for people.
Mhm.
How are you doing during this time? I know it's a big question, but
You know, I feel pretty fine. I feel pretty okay. There's been a lot of things that were like minor inconveniences, but I've worked through this whole thing, so I feel like I'm still just as busy as I was before. But yeah, I feel like um it's shown its ways in minor inconveniences as well as major inconveniences. I don't live with my family, so I don't get to see them as much as I would love to.
yeah,
A lot of my friends live in Toronto or in Quebec, so I'm like, I can't really go see them. Not that I can really see my friends in Oshawa anyways. So it's just like, the connections that I've already established and made, I can't really continue to pursue. Um, at least in a person to person basis. I can
yeah,
do it online, but I feel like it's um not the same. It's not the same just because of like you've established this connection in person to develop a relationship. Sometimes you it would be beneficial to do it more in person. But the good thing about online for art is that it's you can the transition is not effortless but comfortable.
hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you can still consume artwork and create work and put yourself out there from an online platform. I feel like art is multi-dimensional for in this kind of regard. So I feel like I'm not really like struggling to keep up with this, I guess.
Yeah. I know compared to some of the other kind of modalities, I was chatting with Ellen Torrey. I'm not sure if that connection overlaps at all. No, okay. They're based in Montreal now, but musical performance, like performer, and just the lack of audience. There's something really special that happens when you're in a room with folks who are engaging physically with your work, whether it's viewing something or listening to something. And I think it's harder for people like musicians or performers or actors who, it's you don't get that feedback that you would normally.
Mhm.
But it does impact visual artists as well. And I suppose I hadn't thought about it in the same way. There's something about being in a space with a work of art that you just can't, there's nothing that replaces that.
No, absolutely. And the feedback is like you said, it's a lot more direct when your art is like performance based or music based.
Mm.
And even visually, like it's I feel like you have to, if I'm posting something on Instagram, I have to wait for the feedback, and the algorithm will screw you up in that regard unless you're posting like constant reels, constant pictures, whatever. So there's that boundary, like a mild boundary, um, that you're missing out on, I suppose.
Yeah. And that whole process of the new words and new languages, like it's in the last decade, I suppose, where we've really started using words like monetization and, content creation. Like it wasn't content before, it was just, expressing ourselves. And now suddenly we're, again, that idea of product, returning to self and expression of self as product. But it can be exhausting. It can be so exhausting to try and keep up with what you're supposed to do with one, oh, sorry, that's just me. Exhausting.
No, absolutely. I absolutely agree. It's like, you shouldn't be burnt out from being a creative. Well, you can
Mhm.
push yourself when you're a content creator, but you shouldn't be pushing yourself past your limitations regularly for when you do something that you're extremely passionate about. It's okay to sometimes, absolutely, but I feel like that's not the end goal is not to be exhausted. It's
Yeah,
to feel like refreshed personally and tired, but in a good way.
that's it. Yeah, the kind of exhaustion that comes from knowing I've done a great, I've done as much as I can, I've done a good job, I'm happy with what's out there. Yeah, there's different qualities of tired that I think it's important to pay attention to. On that note, can I ask you about self-care and what you found helpful during this time?
I think, um, hmm, hmm,
And it's a
self-care.
complicated question. A lot of artists, they're like, well, I haven't been doing okay during this time, actually. I've been.
Yeah, every experience is a little different. I feel like it hasn't really changed. I feel like, um, self-care for me is like humor, I guess. So, like I just laugh about it or whatever.
Yeah.
And in terms of like tying it to artwork, I'm not creating really big pieces
Mm,
because I feel like that might put a lot of pressure on myself. I mean, I am for school, I have to do that no matter what. So, but
yeah.
when it comes to like my personal, really personal stuff, I always keep like a really small sketchbook. I think just like adapting, um, you know, relaxing times, in a way that's like portable is how I've been kind of grounding myself when everything's so chaotic all the time. And I guess that's my form of self-care. Um, if I don't go outside, I'll still put makeup on. Stuff like that, just like little things like that, just to kind of achieve some sort of like normalcy, I suppose.
Yeah, like snack-sized rituals and moments of productivity. Yeah, manageable things. So I can get
Yeah,
done in one sitting, or I can check this off the list, or just at the end of the day feel like I've accomplished this is what I've accomplished today. Because with the larger projects, you're right, it's hard to gauge progress and process, and especially when things are strange, that I suppose that can feel really overwhelming. How, like, what is the largest kind of piece that you've made?
in general or through like the pandemic.
Well, in general, like, do you normally like go back and forth between smaller pieces and really big ones?
I think the largest one I made was, oh my God, probably like 6 feet by 3 feet, something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Um, yeah, it's kind of big. It's not, but that was for school, and I made that last year. But when it was like for a specific assignment that had a size requirement, so I was like, okay, well, I have to do that. Um, Personally, I don't always. I think like most of my stuff is like really tiny, 8 by 10, 10 by 12, 11 by 14, like sketchbook size, because like I'll do a piece within my sketchbook because it's really accessible,
Yeah.
and then I can rip it out or display it nicely, and that's kind of like my way of remaining productive, I guess. So most of my stuff's pretty small unless it absolutely has to be huge, or if I feel like taking on the challenge of filling up an entire space.
Yeah. Which can be intimidating at first when you're making the shift from working with manageable small size materials and portable things, and then that first time you stare a canvas, a big canvas in the eyes. If that's Do you stare a canvas in the eyes? I'm not sure. Um, but you know what I mean? Like that is a really wild moment for any artist, I think, making that.
Mhm.
What was it like for you staring at that, 6 foot by 3 foot piece?
Well, I mentioned this earlier, like something that really is really helpful when making stuff like that is like just kind of tape it to your wall and coexist with it as you make it. Don't, because like the setup is just so dreadful, especially if you don't have the space for it.
Yeah.
So just tape it to an empty wall and make it there. And that way, you can kind of stop and go as you feel, and there's not as much pressure, and you can always take a step back and look at it. That giant piece was a self-portrait, so I actually was staring it in the eyes. It's kind of terrifying. But that was like, it was really funny in that way. That I could just kind of like coexist with it. And mine was like behind my bedroom door, so like my door would always be open, and then I'd close my door, and it would be like my face, and I'd be like, oh my God, okay, well, good. Um, but like being just, the setup is really dreadful for me. I hate setting up in the space that I'm given. I don't have a lot of space with me right now. So like again, just taping it up and coexisting with it is how I kind of took on something larger size.
Yeah, I love that. Like you remind me, a friend of mine, an artist and filmmaker in New York City, Dar Dowling, has a similar process. Like works on really large scale and pen and ink, but just kind of, lives in a small New York apartment. Just tape it up and you revisit it from time to time, a little bit here, a little bit there, and it becomes less intimidating. That's I love that. I love too that it was a self-portrait that you on the back of your door, so you're sharing space with yourself. I feel like there's a short story or a short film in there somewhere that needs to be made. Anyone
I,
taking that project on?
if I was a filmmaker, I think that'd be really funny. I think like the only process video that I got was when I was first making it. It was literally like just my face,
Yeah.
and I just slowly opened my door and like the creak sound, and then there's like my face. And I was like, that's really terrifying, but also hilarious at the same time. So I feel like I had to capture that. That was it though. That's all I had in terms of like video or filming the terrifying self-portrait that I have.
Oh, I feel like that could be a workshop or an assignment for the community. Maybe a whole other live stream about that to share a space portrait that you're making and build a relationship with it. I don't know. If you're interested, folks, go for it. Let us know how it works out. Oh, thank you so much for joining us today, Deanna. Is there anything as we're wrapping up here that, like any thoughts or wishes or advice is too heavy, but any kind of like words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with folks who are watching or listening?
Oh man. Well, I mean, like, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. That's like I've never done something like this before, so I was like a little nervous, but this is super fun, and I love talking to you. It
Likewise.
was really refreshing. Thank you. I don't have any advice per se, truthfully.
Okay.
I would love to have a piece, but go ahead.
How about this then? What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger artist self?
No rush, relax. That's it. Be adaptable. It's okay. You'll be fine. Just relax, I guess. I guess that's my advice. Just relax. Just enjoy the process. It's supposed to be fun. Self-hatred is not productive when you're making an art piece of any kind. Um, don't criticize yourself unless it's constructive,
Mm.
I suppose. Like, don't just dwell in the self hatred and pity when it's not productive to what you're doing, I suppose.
That's pretty profound stuff. I, I think any artist at any age or stage can take that on. Yeah,
I hope so.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
I didn't realize what time it was. Oh my God.
time flies. Yeah, well, don't worry. We'll be in touch again because you know what? I would certainly love to do something with you, a collaboration of some kind with the living room, whether it's virtual or in person. Once we get the mobile art studio up, we'll keep you posted. So I guess don't be a stranger.
Oh my God. Absolutely not. Oh, that would be so incredible. It'd be so amazing.
Excellent. And maybe we'll rope Korean to it as well. We'll figure it out.
I that sounds like fun. I'd love to do a collab with them again.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you so, so much. Thanks for everything you've shared, your art, your heart, your story, everything. Thanks for everyone who's watched. And we'll see you again real soon, hopefully. Knock on.
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Bye. Wow, how lovely was that? So, folks, what can I do? I can't leave you with any clearer, more just lovely, profound words than that. Enjoy the process. And if that inner critic is getting really loud and preventing you from doing that, find a way to step back, relax, get some perspective, and just, I guess, yeah, play. I love that. And if anyone does decide to take on that giant self-portrait project, sharing space with it, let me know how it goes. I'm really curious about that. That sounds fascinating. Anyways, maybe I'll do it. Thanks so much for joining us here today. And thank you for being out there doing what you're doing, wherever you're doing it, keeping creative and connected to everyone in the community. Your voice matters, your story matters, your art matters, and making art matters in general. You know we believe that. So keep on doing that and taking care of yourself the best ways you can. And I'll see you again soon. And until we can connect and create in person again, I look forward to connecting and creating with you right here online. Tomorrow on Facebook, we'll be doing another pop-up art studio from 2 to 3:30, another Facebook live stream. You can join us and hang out. And next Tuesday, as a part of our artist chat, we'll be talking to an artist that a lot of folks who are familiar with the living room will recognize. We'll be talking to Austin Kirby. So if you can make it next Tuesday at 2 p.m., make sure to tune in for that conversation as well. You know it's going to be interesting catching up with Austin. Anyways, have a lovely day, folks. Thanks for being out there, being you, and taking care of yourself. Bye now.